US President Barack Obama has signed an enhanced military pact with the Philippines as he begins the final leg of his Asia tour. This was a chance to reignite the much-vaunted Asia pivot, but it sparked criticism for leaving China off the itinerary. Obama is also trying to win support for his Trans-Pacific Partnership and economic bloc that would encompass 18 countries, including Australia. With tensions with China rising, a tense standoff as well with Russia over Ukraine, and a failure to reach a breakthrough in Israeli-Palestinian talks, just how should we judge President Obama's foreign policy legacy? Well, Stephen Walt is Professor of International Relations at Harvard University and a guest of the US Studies Centre in Sydney, and he joins me now. Professor Walt, nice to have you on the program. Looking at the Asia trip, was it a mistake to not visit China?
No, I don't think so, because the primary purpose of this trip was to demonstrate that the United States remained fully committed to its various Asian allies and to reassure them that the rebalancing of American attention to Asia was really sincere and that we were in it for the long haul. In that context, visiting Beijing, I think, would have been counterproductive.
Can you do that, though, reassure allies, sign deals as they have now with the Philippines, and try to tie up countries to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which again leaves China out? Can you do all of that without making China feel as if this isn't an effort to try to contain its rise?
Well, I think it is an effort to try and prepare for the possibility of a more assertive China down the road. This is something that clearly has a number of Asian countries worried, including many people here in Australia. And I think it was important for the United States to signal first and foremost that, just as we have said in recent years, we were going to shift a lot of our attention to Asia, that we really meant it. So in that sense, I think it was preparing for the possibility of intense competition with China, and while we hope to avoid it in the future.
Now, many have looked at the US-China relationship and see that as the defining issue of this century. In your mind, is this something that the two powers can reach an accommodation on, despite the various tensions that may exist? Or is there an inevitability of conflict as one power potentially wanes and another rises?
Well, I think the United States is not going to be waning significantly. In fact, America's future looks fairly bright if you take the long term. Certainly, if China continues to grow economically as it has over the last 20 or 30 years, the likelihood of a fairly serious rivalry between these two countries, I think, is very high. The two most powerful countries in the world will inevitably view each other with a wary eye, with a certain degree of suspicion. That doesn't mean that there's going to be a war. That doesn't mean there'll necessarily be a clash of arms. But I think we ought to anticipate a intense security competition, especially here in Asia, if China continues to develop economically. That's not a certainty, however, and certainly overt violent conflict is not inevitable if we prepare for it.
And that is the focus of the so-called Asia pivot. It has been a fairly stop-start affair, given the other distractions that President Obama has had to deal with, of course, in the Middle East, also in Ukraine now. How would you assess the pivot? Is it in stronger shape after this trip than it was before?
I think there's no question it's in stronger shape, and it is, in fact, being driven by some very large, enduring economic and political forces. So I think it's going to continue and it's going to happen. The big challenge for the Obama administration and for subsequent American administrations is not to be too distracted by issues elsewhere so that we take our eye off the important relationships that are really going to matter. And that's the one place I might fault the Obama administration in the last year or two, that they really haven't had a clearer sense of strategic priorities.
Others have faulted the Obama administration, indeed the president himself, for being timid when it comes to international affairs. The president has said that the US shouldn't have to be the world's police, but on issues such as Syria, Ukraine now, the relationship with Russia, that others have seen a vulnerability on the part of the president and a reluctance to really assert American power. How do you see it?
I think that's a mistake. In the Syrian case, the fact is the United States had no attractive military options for dealing with the tragedy that is taking place in Syria. And for the United States to have intervened in any way would quite possibly have made that problem worse. Syria, in fact, is not a vital American strategic interest, and I think President Obama ultimately made the right call there. Ukraine, similarly, the United States does not want to get into a significant violent confrontation over Ukraine. It is not, in fact, an alliance partner, and greater assertiveness by the United States could easily trigger greater Russian intervention and a possible civil war there. That problem, like Syria, is best handled through more patient diplomacy. So I think there the Obama administration is right not to escalate, although I think they've not handled Ukraine perfectly.
And just finally and fairly quickly, does Obama have a diplomatic partner, though, in Vladimir Putin?
Putin, I think, is defending Russian national interests in a very hard-headed and indeed ruthless way. But there are many other issues where we're going to want Russian cooperation, and it's our interest to try and get a unified Ukraine, a neutral Ukraine, and a Ukrainian issue that's resolved so we can work with Moscow on other issues like Iran and China.
Professor Walt, a real pleasure to have you on the program. Enjoy your trip to Australia. Thank you.
Thank you.